Shout out to G-Man Boxing. Where's the piss bottle? It's over there.
Alright people, review of the week time, and boy, there's been some fights on this weekend. There's been a lot of fights on this weekend. I didn't get a chance to watch them all. I watched a few live then and there. I caught up on some today. Obviously, I've seen Edgar Berlanga versus Steve Rolls, and Berlanga, what did he get to? He got to 16-0 with 16 knockouts, all of which were in the first round. And I mean, they were so poor, the opponents he was fighting, when he amassed that record. He fought the guy, what was his name, Desmond Nicol or something like that, or Nicholson or something like that his name was. And he was a durable guy. Yeah, he went down. And then he had that fight last time. I think that was on the Wilder Fury undercard, the trilogy fight against, his name escapes me, Caracas, I think is how you pronounce his name, or Corisadis or something like that. He's the guy Billy Joe fought on the Jake Paul KSI undercard a couple of years ago. And Billy Joe knocked him out in 11 rounds. And that was a real tough fight for Billy Joe. That was back down at, no, that was 168 pounds, sorry. But that guy was a natural middleweight. If you go and look at his box rec, he was mainly at middleweight. And arguably, a lot of people felt he beat Edgar Berlanga that night. Didn't he drop Berlanga as well? Or was it the other way around? But Berlanga against Steve Rolls, another unanimous decision. He's not had a knockout for his last 3 fights. People say Triple G didn't look particularly good against Steve Rolls when he fought him a couple of years ago. Triple G is not at his prime anymore, and he still did a much better job on Steve Rolls did, past his prime, than Berlanga did. And Berlanga's 22, 23, maybe a bit older, but he did around that age. So we'll watch how Berlanga goes. He certainly has power, that of which I don't think there's any question. There is power there. Some may say it's a bit overrated, in a sense of that now that he's stepped up his levels, he's not getting as many knockouts. That does tend to happen when you go up the levels, to be fair. But I think Berlanga's just delivery system of his power is just not great. I don't think he's able to land clean and consistent on these guys. When he was fighting those guys on the way up, I mean, they were, as I said, they were garbage. They were absolutely garbage. Other fights that happened was over in Japan. Ken Shearer, this was down at 108 pounds, light flyweight. I don't give them guys enough credit. I see his first fight with the guy, his name escapes me, but it begins with a Y, as far as I remember anyway. And Ken Shearer got stopped, I think that was just before Christmas. This was a rematch, took care of the guy in 3 rounds, gets his 108 pound title back down there at light fly. He's WBC champion. Ken Shearer is one of those fighters in the lower weight divisions that I actually do enjoy watching. He's very accurate, he's got good volume, he's a good boxer, over there in Japan. Japan is smaller fighters, that's normally their mecca. They like them over there. They get a lot of the guys in the lower weight classes who fight there. Chocolatito fought for a large part in Japan. I think he's sponsored by that Tatanka crowd. I'm pretty sure they're a Japanese company, if someone wants to correct me on that. But he fought in Japan, for a large part of his career. I think he might have even fought Estrada in Japan, or was that in Mexico? It was either one or the other, but a large part of his career was based over there. In terms of fights closer to the pond, I obviously saw the Frank Warren card that was on last night. Again, a bit like the card the week before, very limited in terms of how much marketing that went into this, that I only found out about it that week that David Avnissian was fighting on the card. And Avnissian was in there with an undefeated Finnish guy, defending his European title. Absolute mismatch. Yes, the guy was undefeated, but he fought absolutely nobody. The minute Avnissian landed anything remotely hard, the guy was in all sorts of trouble. He was taken out in a round. You had Dennis McCann on that card as well. When he turned over, looking very impressive. He is still quite young, but I watched his fight. He was in an 8-rounder, and he won it comfortably, hurt the guy a couple of times. But he was getting hit quite consistent, and with right hands, and he was having no adjustments whatsoever. There was literally, over the course of that fight, there was no adjustments. I think he needs a lot of work. At the start, he looked very flashy, very athletic, decent power. But now I think he's starting to he's kind of stagnating a bit, and he's stepping up the levels and he's not rising to the levels. Obviously, he's better than the guys he's fighting, but if you're getting hit by guys like this consistently with the same shot, you're not adjusted. The minute you start going up through the levels, that's going to be a problem. Who else was on that card? that guy, I can't think of his name, but the guy who fought Bradley Skeet, who knocked him out while he was on the ground. Well, Bradley Skeet got back up, but the referee in that fight did a terrible job. He got back to winning ways over Jez Smith. Jez Smith really should call it a day. He's 27 years old and he's been in some very tough fights as of late, very tough, and I think that for his own health he maybe want to have a look at things, because his punch resistance needs to be gone now at this stage. This was a guy who was beating Kerman Leharaga back last year in a very good fight. If you haven't seen Jez Smith versus Leharaga, go and have a watch, but it was absolutely disgraceful officiating in that fight. It was in Spain and the referee was an absolute disgrace in that fight. I felt that he stopped Jez Smith quite premature and he let Leharaga away with murder when he was hurt a couple of times in that fight, with spitting the mouthpiece out, giving him time. Yeah, it was a fun fight, but very poor officiating. So that was the Frank Warren card that was on last night. I did watch, for my sins, the Eddie... I know, yeah, but we're talking about YouTubers, or not YouTubers, we're talking about strong men having a boxing match. But I watched the Eddie Hall versus Torbjorns fight because I really wanted to see both guys swing and miss and potentially one of them land a big shot. There was 3 knockdowns in the fight. Tor touchdown first. Eddie Hall looked they both looked absolutely horrendous, but at least Tor was using his reach and range. You know, he was significantly taller. He was able to keep Eddie Hall away. Eddie Hall hadn't a clue what he was doing. He had such a weird... He was standing like that with his jab trying to pick shots, and occasionally would absolutely swing a looping shot. But the amount of mistakes he was making, I mean, he was getting hit with jabs and left hands so frequently because he was trying to switch hit, and he was switching stance directly in front of his opponent. Like, just the worst thing you can do at any level, you know, whether like is switch stance. Even if your opponent is garbage, he's gonna know, oh, he's switching stance, grand, boom, I hit you. And Eddie Hall was down twice, got through the fight, but it wasn't the... I had a feeling going into it that it would be real entertaining, that both guys would be just swinging. It was alright at times, but like 6 rounds in my life that I'll probably never get back, because it's alright. It wasn't anything major. But before that card happened, we obviously had the Probellum card. There was actually 2 Probellum cards on in the same arena. I think it was in a tennis stadium over there in Dubai. On Friday night, that was headlined by John O'Carroll. It was kind of just a run out for certain guys, just to kind of, you know, get a look at Probellum on Eurosport, see what it is. They obviously had, Barry Jones commentated on the Tor Eddie Hall fight. But the actual commentary team on the main 2 cards, the Probellum cards, were Andy Clark, who is normally a Sky commentator. He normally does the undercard version. So very, very seldom you get main commentators who do the whole show. It's very seldom you do it. They normally do 3-4 fights tops. So, like Adam Smith, for example, he would mainly do the main portion of the Sky card, whereas before that you'd have Andy Clark. Andy Clark was doing this with Paul Smith. I actually think Andy Clark is quite a good commentator. You know, he is underrated, and I think he's underrated because we forget about him. I certainly forget about Andy Clark from time to time when people are asking good commentators, because he is easy on the eyes. He does know what he's talking about. He's got a good voice. You know, he articulates himself quite well, and you sometimes forget actually that he does that. He actually was fine. Paul Smith is what it is. They had Jim White, who you may know from Sky. He also works on TalkSport now. He was one of the presenters along with Ali Drew and Radio Raheem. I thought the quality of the actual fights, like John O'Carroll was in a bit of a mismatch. Obviously, we had the next night, we had the Prograis versus McKenna fight, which was just, yeah, that was bad matchmaking. Because it served no real purpose. It was literally at one stage like Regis Prograis hitting the heavy bag, albeit I thought he looked alright in terms of his sharpness, but in terms of actual what he was doing in there, you know, in terms of what he didn't have an opponent really who was coming back at him really with much in terms of McKenna. So that fight was what it was. And then obviously we had Sonny Edwards against, I'm just going to call him Wazeem. I thought Sonny Edwards boxed the ears off the guy. He had moments of success, did Wazeem in there, but they were really few and far between. It was mainly Sonny Edwards doing what he does, bull against matador kind of thing. Try as hard as Sonny Edwards did to try and get like some big shots off and maybe force a stoppage, Sonny Edwards just doesn't have that kind of pop. And I don't think he really trains for that kind of pop. I'm sure if Grant Smith, who was Sonny Edwards' coach, really wanted to, he probably could bring out a bit more power than Sonny Edwards. But Sonny Edwards doesn't strike me as the kind of, you can't turn Paulie Malignaggi into, you know, Tyson, into Deontay Wilder, you know, even Tyson Fury. If you can improve the power, and I'm sure that they could do that with Sonny Edwards, I just don't see him. And at flyweight, you don't normally tend to see punchers anyway. You know, you get guys like Inoue who are the exception rather than the rules in terms of their punching power. I think that was all the cards that we had, unless I'm missing one, because I watched so much boxing this weekend. I'm pretty sure that was it. In terms of Probellum, I have another card coming up with, I think it's this weekend or this Friday, with Lewisritzen headlining against Zetichinen. You may remember him. He sounded like Troy McClure there. You may remember me from such shows as. But he was WBC champion at lightweight a couple of years ago. He got knocked out by Mikey Garcia in 3 rounds. That was on the Leo Santa Cruz, Carl Frampton undercard. I think that was the rematch. Pretty sure that was on that card anyway. And obviously since then he actually got knocked out by some unknown guy in a fight after. I believe he lost his last fight. I can't remember who it was to. I actually think I seen it, but I can't remember the guy's name. So he's really kind of the height and then low. So I think Ritson, he's trying to build himself back up. He's with Probellum. And I've got to be frank, I was actually I thought the show itself in terms of production value was quite good. If I had one complaint, they were trying to make it out as though the stadium was full when it clearly wasn't. And they constantly were saying, like, look at this packed stadium. And they'd zoom out so where you could see the whole stadium. And it was like not embarrassingly empty, that's the wrong word, but like you could clearly see the empty seats. So I was like, maybe you want to rearrange the cameras or something like that, maybe not show the full stadium if you want to say it's packed and you're seeing like loads of empty parts of the stands. But in terms of the production value, in terms of the broadcast team, I thought it was alright. I was a bit upset that we didn't get to see Steve Holdsworth. That's the one. When I heard it was on Eurosport, I was thinking, please get Steve Holdsworth on commentary. He's absolutely fantastic. If you've never seen him, just go and type him in on YouTube. He's a former fighter. He was commentating. He might still do the odd show if they ever do shows on Eurosport other than Probellum. But he used to do the commentary for them, and he was absolutely fantastic. He was just so funny and just so sarcastic. And yeah, he was one of them commentators. And he knew boxing, but he was entertaining. So I'd love it if Probellum, because it's on Eurosport, would get him. Who knows? In terms of everything else, let's talk about some of the fights that are coming up. Let's preview some of them. And let's also talk about some of the news. So Frank Warren actually stated that discussions that he's revealed that he's reached out to Anthony Joshua's team about potentially fighting Joe Joyce. That could mean absolutely anything. It could mean that he's literally maybe sent him an email saying, hi, how you doing? That literally could be what it is. So I take that with a pinch of salt. And with regards this actual fight here, with like Joe Joyce, Anthony Joshua, or everything else, I reckon we are going to see Oleksandr Usyk after all. I'll tell you why. Because the cultural minister of Ukraine, this was reported on the 19th, which was about 2 days ago. Actually, yesterday I should say, sorry, it's 20th today. The cultural minister of Ukraine has now offered both Oleksandr Usyk and Vasyl Lomachenko a chance to leave the country's defence forces to train for both their potential upcoming fights. Anthony Joshua being Oleksandr Usyk, and potentially George Kambosos versus Lomachenko. That's what Bob Arum has revealed. So essentially it's looking like Oleksandr Usyk may be able to get and start camp as well as Vasyl Lomachenko. I don't know. I think the AJ Usyk fight is more, well, it is, because it's a rematch. It's signed. It's contractually obliged. But the Kambosos Lomachenko one, I'm not too sure where that stands, because it was never officially announced. So like there was never like an official word like, you know, this fight is happening on this day. And then, you know, the whole situation with Lomachenko and Usyk came up. That was never the case. So, and Eddie Hearn is still saying that Devin Haney is definitely next. So, with Usyk, I can kind of say what's more likely we're going to see him against AJ in the summer after all. Whereas Lomachenko and Kambosos, it's a little bit more up in the air because that fight was never official, per se. You know, I know they were saying the contracts are pretty much a done deal, but Eddie Hearn's still speaking about Devin Haney. So, I'll watch space with that. Obviously, I love the Kambosos Lomachenko fight. I think that's brilliant. stylistically. I do think that it's a more winnable fight for Kambosos in a sense of Devin Haney. If him against Devin Haney, I feel is a more winnable fight for Kambosos. I think Lomachenko, as fun as it would be from a stylistic point of view, I can't see Kambosos beating Vasily Lomachenko. I really can't. Even if it's in Australia, I still can't see him beating Vasily Lomachenko. I really can't. So we will watch the space with that. It's very interesting. Another fight that was announced, it's that Artur Beterbiev versus Joe Smith Jr. 3-belt unification, WBC, IBF and WBO. Undisputed light heavyweight unification is now reportedly agreed. Principal date, June the 18th in New York, the home of Joe Smith Jr. So Beterbiev doesn't, I would imagine he could care less. Literally, he could probably care less about where the fight is. He'll just want to fight. Him against Joe Smith, of course I'm picking Artur Beterbiev to win as it stands now. He had a good performance there against Marcus Brown. He really broke Marcus Brown down tremendously in that fight. Artur Beterbiev, the only issue with him is inactivity. You know, throughout his career, throughout his whole pro career, he's been plagued with periods of inactivity. He's getting up there in age. I suspect him making light heavyweight is getting harder and harder. So all them factors, you would say that Joe Smith can punch, Beterbiev can be hurt. Joe Smith is very big himself. He's quite relentless. It's got all the makings of a good fight. And if Beterbiev does, because at this stage now, especially in Beterbiev's career, I wonder, is he in that age range where one good performance you could grow old overnight real quick, and that one good performance, your next performance, you're like a shell of your former self. I don't know if that's the case. I suspect the fact that he was active last year and still quite active, like, I mean, he fought in March last year, didn't look particularly good in that fight, fought Marcus Brown in December, looked alright in that fight, and now is back in June. So he's been quite, by his standards anyway, that's very active. 3 fights in over a year. It's very active by Beterbiev standards. So I would imagine that's going to help him out more. And if you're looking at Canelo Alvarez's next move at light heavyweight, I mean, he's going to fight Dimitri Bivol in May. And these two are going to have a fight. I would imagine Anthony Yarde will likely face the winner. I'd imagine Fish Eyes will be trying to, you know, maneuver Yarde in such a way that he'll get an immediate crack at the winner, because especially since Canelo was going to fight Triple G in September, assuming he gets past Dimitri Bivol, these guys, whoever wins this, will probably want an interim fight. So there you go, Anthony Yarde, mandatory as far as I believe the WBO, so they'll probably look to get that fight over the line for the winner of this. And I would imagine next year Canelo Alvarez, if he beats Dimitri Bivol, he'll have the WBA. He's working on, he can do what he likes. So he's got the 2 fights with Matchroom. So he gets Bivol out of the way, he gets Triple G out of the way. He can go to Bob Arum and say, give me a fight, or give me a 2-fight deal for X amount of money. And I'm sure it'd be a crazy amount of money. And there you go. Canelo would fight the winner of this undisputed at 2 weights in doubly quick time as well. So I'd imagine that's what Canelo's doing. As I said, in terms of this fight, has all the recipes for a fantastic fight. Both guys are big, both guys are strong, both guys are big punchers. Beterbiev technically way better than Joe Smith Jr. I mean, Joe Smith Jr., don't get me wrong, he's improved over the years. I remember when he knocked out Fonfara in a round. Even though he knocked him out in a round, you could see the skill gap between Fonfara and Joe Smith immediately on fight night. You could see it immediately. Joe Smith was just able to punch with Fonfara and knocked him out with one shot. Well, actually, he knocked him down with one shot. He got back up, but he was done, and he knocked him down again, and that was the end of that. But Joe Smith has improved from a technical point of view since then. I know at one stage he was working full-time in training. I don't know if he's still doing that now, but I would still, even though it's in New York, I'd still make Beterbiev a firm favourite to win that fight. Jared Anderson will face, oh Jesus, Christian Hammer, woohoo, on the undercard of Tyson Fury versus Dillian White. Yeah, look, I'm happy to see Jared Anderson on that card. He's a tremendous heavyweight prospect, excellent fighter. Glad to see him coming over to the UK. Christian Hammer is basically a journeyman at this stage. He's basically a journeyman at this stage. It's announced that Jack Catterall has signed a promotional deal with Probellum, which is very interesting. And shockingly, and this is absolutely silly, The WBO have now dropped Jack Catterall from number 1 ranked in their rankings to number 3 ranked. The WBO rankings following his defeat to Josh Taylor. This means if Taylor does vacate, Liam Pereiro versus Teofimo Lopez will likely be ordered. Now that's silly, the fact that they move him down to number 3. The fact that Teofimo Lopez is going to move up means that he'll probably jump into number 2, so he'll get a crack more than likely at the vacant title. But it amazes me, some of these ranking governing bodies, how they change the rankings so dramatically. I mean, you've Jack Catterall here, who lost a very controversial decision, going from number 1 down to number 3. You had Kid Galahad, right, when he was mandatory for the IBF and he lost to Josh Warrington. Very close fight, could have gone either way. What did the IBF do? I think they kept him at number 1 and put him straight in another eliminator. I just don't understand that. So one sanctioned body moves you down a couple of places, and I've seen them. They moved other champions, previous champions, down even further than that. And then another sanctioned body, your mandatory challenger loses. Leave number 1, put him in an eliminator next fight. Explain, like, logic. And it's not just that wasn't just a once off. The IBF and even the WBC, they've all done it before a couple of times. Of some mandatory challenger has lost. Keep him at number 1. Why? He's lost. Make no sense to me. But he signed with Probellum. So obviously the fight that I think would be on a lot of people's minds, because they're both with Probellum, would be, actually, before I finish, Teofimo Lopez at number 2 with the WBO. Me thinking that was lightweight. Yes, of course, that's 140 pounds. So Teofimo Lopez hasn't even had a fight at 140 pounds. And he's already ranked ahead of Jack Catterall. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But in terms of Jack Catterall, look, I'd say that they're going to try and get him versus Prograis, possibly for a WBA or WBC. I know that apparently that Tyrone McKenna fight was a final eliminator for Regis Prograis, so we'll wait and see, watch the space there. Zach Parker will face Demetrius Andre for the WBO interim super middleweight world title. More than likely will be elevated to full sooner or later. On May the 21st in Derby County's Pride Park. Wow. So, Frank Warren, does he really think that that's going to fill? Like, unless Zach Parker is a much bigger name, and I wonder, do I have any subscribers from Derby or in around that region? Derby is kind of, I think it's more the northwest of the UK, or if it's not the northwest, it's certainly in the kind of northern region. In fact, actually, it's probably slap bang in the middle. People always give me crap about geography. Let's see where Derby is. I want to see where this actually is. Derby in the UK. Whereabouts is it? Derbyshire. I'm just curious. It's in the Midlands. So it's in the Midlands of the UK. So, okay. So it's not in the northwest. I was completely off with that. But if there's any fans of mine or subscribers of mine, I should say, who are from there, want to let me know, do you reckon that would fill up the stadium? It's a big enough stadium, the Derby County Stadium, but I can't see that filling it. Might be a bit like when Billy Joe Saunders fought at Stevenage Stadium. You know, maybe that would be a more fitting kind of idea, because it's a smaller place, so it will look full, even if it's not full of even if it's not, jam packed, it'll look quite full. So that is that. There was other things. I think I pretty much nailed most of what I wanted to talk about in this with regards, the news. I'm just trying to see, is there anything else that we could maybe, preview a couple of the fights that are coming up this weekend. So obviously I talked about the Probellum cards coming up this weekend. Obviously Josh Warrington versus Kiko Martinez. That's clashing, and I don't like it when promoters do this. And this was Ben Shalom who did it, not Eddie Hearn, because Eddie Hearn had this fight announced long before. A Ben Shalom Sky card is going up against the DAZN card, and I just think that the whole DAZN card is just better, it's just superior, and I'm more interested in the fights that are on that card, so that's the one I'm going to be watching. I don't know if I'll have time to do a live watch along, because I might be out that day. If I don't have time to do a live watch along, we'll do a live kind of straight away reaction after it. I done that last time with Josh Warrington's fight when he fought Lara, and I actually got over 5k for doing that, subs for doing it, so maybe it's a good omen. So it'd be one or the other. If I can't get home to do a watch along, I'll be home not long after the fight starts, so I'll probably do a kind of post-fight stream, either or. In terms of other fights, Box Nation announced that they're going to be showing a fight this coming Saturday. And I'm going to be frank, right? I had no idea this guy was even fighting, or that Box Nation were doing anything. But Lee Selby is apparently fighting in a final eliminator for the IBF. So he'd be mandatory for George Campos if he wins, against a guy called Gustav Daniel Lemus. Now, I have seen him fight before. He can definitely punch, but he's a bit crude, not really got much of a defense there. But interestingly, this fight's going to be in Argentina. It's in Buenos Aires. Lee Selby, former champion. He's not fought since he actually lost to Cambosis. I really, like, Lee Selby's 35 now. And honestly, I don't mean this in a disrespect way, but he couldn't fill an empty hall in Wales. He really couldn't. I mean, the fact that he's having... It's not the first time. Even his brother had to travel. And this is before Julio Cesar Martinez was known, to Mexico. I mean, they really are always the B-side, it seems, Team Selby. Even when they were world champion, they were just kind of... Eddie Hearn, I remember, when Lee Selby was world champion, he put him on first fight of the night, when he was world champion, on the Bellew Hay card. It's just crazy how little these promoters seem to want to do for Lee Selby. He's not the most entertaining. He's a good fighter, as Lee Selby, don't get me wrong. I've always felt he was a little bit overrated, but he is a good fighter. But he just seems to have no real sway with promoters. It just always seems to be on the B-side. So he's fighting in Argentina this Saturday. That's probably in the evening. That's probably late at night because the time difference. So I'll keep an eye on that fight. I wonder how fighting in Argentina is going to affect them. Jesus, that's crazy. In Argentina, Jesus Christ, in Buenos Aires. And then obviously, who else do we have? We have a fight in the States. Oh yeah, we have Tim Tszyu in the States this coming Saturday. So I'll probably end up staying up for that because I haven't got a chance to watch Tim Tszyu live yet. So I'll definitely have a look at that. But apart from that, I think we're pretty much done. I don't want this to be too long a video, so we'll end it here. I hope you enjoyed that. I will do a preview of the Warrington Kiko Martinez fight this probably today, Monday or Tuesday, one or the other. We'll get it out one of the days. I want to do I want to just give my thoughts, preview, analyze that fight, give my 2 cents on it. And obviously, I want to preview the card. I think the card's actually quite good. I think the Zone, they got a few good little scraps on that card that I want to talk about. So we'll get that out one of the days this week. As for everything else, things have been going well on this channel lately. Long may it continue. How I would love, because last time Josh Warrington fought, it actually pushed me over 5k. How I would love if we could repeat it again and we can get over 7k. It's a big ask because I'm still like 140 subs or 160 subs off 7k. But on a really, really big fight, that if you pull up all the stops, you can easily get 100, 200 subs. As a tip for any YouTubers out there, small time ones, put the effort in on fight night and fight week for big events. You will reap the reward. If you're just going to do one video the next day, ain't going to help you. Put in the effort fight week and on fight night, you will reap the rewards. For now, I will leave you with that. If you could, lads and lassies, if you could, please smash the like button, hit subscribe. All helps. This really does help your boy out. Something terrible. For now, I'll talk to you. Peace.